Hey, this is Elijah with the Oxygen team, and in this video, we're going to build a split slider in Oxygen using the built-in slider element and a little bit of custom code. A split slider looks like this, which essentially has two slider sections that are controlled by a single set of navigation buttons. So let's jump straight into Oxygen and get started. Now, the first thing we're going to need is a div. So let's click Add, find our div, and drop that in. And we're going to work with classes from the beginning here to make sure everything is nice and clean. So let's go up to the selector dropdown and add a class to this. And we're going to call it split-slider-wrap because we're going to use BEM naming methodology here while we build this split slider. Next, let's go ahead and set it to lay out its child elements horizontally and stretch everything vertically. Now, under Advanced Size and Spacing, we're going to want to go ahead and set this to 100 VH. Now we need to go ahead and drop in our first slider element. So let's search for it in the Add pane and add that slider. And we're going to have to change some things here. First, let's go to the styling options and make sure we're set to horizontal. We're going to remove the padding, set the dots to overlay the slider, and set all slides to stretch to the same height. Now, under configuration, we want to keep the arrows and the dots, but we're not going to use them. We'll hide them later, but leave those checked. And then let's check the infinite option. Let's take a look in the structure pane and see what we've got here. So we've got this slider that is the full height of the page. Now let's add some classes. Let's call this split slider wrap underscore underscore because we're using BEM. 2 underscores denotes that this is a child of split slider wrap. And we're going to do split slider wrap underscore underscore slider. And then for the slides, we'll do split slider wrap underscore underscore slider underscore underscore slide. And this keeps everything nicely organized. Now we're going to want to set our slider to 50% width. So let's select that, go to Advanced, Size and Spacing, and set that width to 50%. Now I'm not going to duplicate this just yet, but we are going to need 2 of these sliders later. Let's go ahead and just drop a text element into this first slide. And then let's duplicate this slide one time. And then we're going to want to just change our text to something so that we can see that it's obviously moving. And then let's duplicate the slide again and change this text to slide 3. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to select our slider wrap div up here. And let's go ahead and rename this to slider wrap to make it easier to see what we're working with. And then we're going to go to Advanced Layout and set this to Position Relative because our custom navigation we're going to set up is going to be absolutely positioned. Now let's go ahead and drop a div into the slider wrap element and give it a class of split-slider-wrap underscore underscore navigation. We're following the same naming convention that we established earlier. And now that that class is on there, let's go to Advanced Layout and set it to Position Absolute. Then let's set it to 32 pixels from the bottom and then 0 from the left and right to make it full width. Now let's add one of our buttons. We're just going to use a regular div here and add a class called split-slider/wrap underscore underscore navigation underscore underscore button. And we're going to need another couple of classes for this too. This is going to be our left or previous button. So let's add split-slider-wrap underscore underscore navigation underscore underscore button. And then because we're modifying this base class and we're using BEM, we want to denote that by using 2 dashes and adding left. Let's drop a text element in there. And then we can go ahead and duplicate our button. On the right button, let's add the class split slider wrap with that dash dash right modifier and then remove the left class since this is the right button. Now we're going to want to go ahead and style our buttons up. So select either of the buttons and then make sure you have that base class selected, not the left or the right version. And actually on this one, we can go ahead and remove the left class and then make sure we have that base class selected on both of these buttons so that when we go to apply styles, we don't get mixed up and style the wrong thing. Now we're going to go to advanced size and spacing and set 8 pixels of padding on the top and the bottom, and then 32 pixels, I think, on the left and right to make it nice and big and attention grabbing. Then let's change the typography settings and set our font size to 12 pixels, uppercase, and 4 pixel letter spacing. Let's go ahead and change these labels to previous and next. And then let's set the background color of the buttons to white. Perfect. Now let's select our navigation div here and set it to stack child elements horizontally and space between for the horizontal item alignment. And let's save that. Now, once we have a background color on these slides, you'll see what our navigation looks like. And that'll look really nice once everything is styled up. So let's go ahead and save that. And now let's go ahead and duplicate this slide, and then we can move on to making our navigation actually work and doing some of the custom CSS and code bits that are required to make this thing function. So let's select the body there, and then let's drop in a code block. First, let's go to the PHP and HTML editor and just comment that out. We don't need any of that. And then let's go and start in the CSS tab. So the first thing we're going to do is use the is selector to select unslider-arrow.next, unslider-arrow.prev, and we can actually combine this together and also grab unslider-nav. And we just want to set all of these to display none, and that will hide all of our built-in navigation elements from the slider. Now, another thing we want to do is we don't want to be able to click and drag our slides left and right. So we're going to use body not ng-scope .unslider, and then we're just going to set this to pointer events none. And this basically says as long as we're not in the builder, make these sliders not interact with the pointer. So they can't be clicked and dragged because we want them and need them to be controlled by our custom navigation instead. Now let's save this and we can jump to the front end and I'll show you exactly what that did. So if we click and drag, nothing happens. And that's exactly what we want for this specific case. Now let's jump over to the JavaScript editor and get started on some of this JavaScript trickery that we need to set up. Now first we need to make sure we have the proper classes so we can jump up to the selector dropdown and just look for those. And in this case we need split-slider-wrap__navigation__button. And when we click this is when we want to do some things here to make our navigation work. First, let's do an e.prevent default, and that's just going to prevent the button from doing any of its default actions when you click it. And later, we're going to do some stuff for animate on scroll here, so I'm just putting a little placeholder comment here to remind me to put that in there later. So now we're watching for a click event on all of our buttons, and we need to check whether the left or the right button is clicked. So we're going to do if jQuery this.hasClass, and then we're going to look for that left class that we set up earlier. And we're going to do some stuff specific to the left button. And then otherwise, if it has the class with the right modifier, we're going to do something different. So let's go ahead and just type in this full selector and then open and close curly braces here. And that gives us a spot to do what we need to do when those buttons are clicked. And we can go up again and just verify we have the correct class names. It's always good to double check because if you have the wrong class names, none of your code's going to work and you're going to wonder why and probably spend a little bit too long troubleshooting it. So now when the left button is clicked, what we want to do is we want to use jQuery to find the unslider-arrow.prev button and click it. It's that simple. And then when the right button is clicked, we want to use jQuery to find the unslider-arrow.next button and click it. Now we can save this and jump up to the front end and just look at how our custom navigation works. When we click these, it's going to move both slides forward or backward. Now we're also going to do some stuff with the animate on scroll. The slider by default in Oxygen doesn't really work well with animate on scroll, so we have to add in some trickery to make it work. The first thing we're going to want to do is to set up a document.ready function. So let's go down here below our click function and do jQuery document.ready and then run a function when the document's ready. And in here, we're going to use jQuery to find list items that do not have the class unslider-active. And then we're going to go ahead and look for children of those elements that have the class AOS-animate, and then we're going to go ahead and remove that class. So what this is going to do is this is going to deanimate any of the non-visible slider children that are animated. So basically, they're going to be in the ready position to animate in when that slider becomes visible. Then we're going to go up here, and before we process which button we've clicked, we're going to go ahead and deanimate things again, which means when we are moving to the next slide, the previously active slide is going to have its child elements go ahead and animate back out, and this will give us a really nice effect. So we're going to do jQuery unslider ct-slide, and then we're going to find children of that with the AOS-animate class, and we're going to remove that class. And then down here, after we're done processing which button we're clicking, we need to set a timeout to animate things back in. So we're going to set the timeout and run a function. And in that function, we're going to use jQuery to look again for those children in the active sliders with the AOS-init class. And we're going to add the class AOS-animate. And then let's go down here, close out our function, and set our timeout to 750, which is going to match the speed of our slider. So let's apply that code, save, and go back to our sliders and just confirm that. It should be under styling options, the animation speed is 750. So that's going to line up really nicely because we matched that speed there in our timeout function. So now we've got all of our functionality and our code bits set up, we can go ahead and start designing our slides. Let's expand these and make sure we go to slide 1 on both sliders so that we're matched up. And then on this left-hand slide, let's make sure we have the ID selected here. And let's go to Advanced, Background, and let's browse. I have a couple of images already uploaded here, so I'm going to select one of those. And then let's go to Gradient and just set up a gradient for this to kind of adjust the coloring a bit. We're going to go towards the kind of purple side of things and go fairly dark, but we're going to set a transparency on both colors. Let's go a little more pink on this one, darken it down, and then lower the transparency. So now we can set our text elements color to white. Let's go ahead and change the font family to something like Laura. And then let's adjust the font size to 48 pixels and the font weight to 600. Then let's go ahead and change our text to something. We'll say, "A beautiful journey begins." And then let's grab our slide and adjust the alignment to the left there. And then we're going to want some padding here. So let's go to Advanced, Size and Spacing, and set the padding to 16 pixels all the way around. So there we have our left slide. Now we're going to need some content in our right slide. So we're going to go over here and switch over to the ID and change the background color to kind of a darker purple color or something that's kind of in line with the colors of our image in the left slide. Now we're going to get rid of this text element. Just go ahead and delete that. And then we'll duplicate our text element from the left slide and drag it on over to our right slide. Now we can select this text element and adjust the font size down a little bit and then change it to say something like, "We create things together." Now let's go ahead and drop in a rich text element, and I'm going to grab some placeholder text here and just drop that into the rich text element. So double click it and then paste that in, save and close. Perfect. Now we're going to change the text color to white and the font family to Laura so that we match our little headline there. Now let's go ahead and select our slide, and let's go ahead and align our child elements to the left and then vertically to the center. And then under size and spacing, we're going to want to set this to 16 pixels all the way around, again, just like we did on the left slide. Now we're going to want to add a call to action button, but first, let's add some margin to these text elements. So we'll select the headline, go to advanced size and spacing, set 32 pixels bottom margin, and then we'll do the same thing on the rich text element. Now we can add in a link wrapper element, and this is going to be our call to action button. And we're going to go ahead and add a class of split-slider-wrap __slider_slide _CTA. And this again follows that naming convention that we established right at the beginning. Now let's go to advanced size and spacing and set up some padding, because all of these CTAs are going to have the same padding. So we'll do 16 top and bottom and 32 left and right. Let's drop a text element into it and then go back to our link wrapper, and we're going to want to change our typography settings to white and then change our font weight to 600. Then we can go ahead and just set our font size to 12, set our letter spacing to 4, and then go ahead and change our label to say something appropriate for a CTA button. Now let's select our CTA button, and actually let's go to typography again and set this to uppercase so that we kind of match the style of our navigation buttons. Now let's make sure we have the ID selected, because we're going to set the background color to a different color for each slide. And let's just change this to something that kind of matches our slide itself. And we don't want to change the font color. We want to change the background color. So under advanced background, we're going to change this to kind of a purpley color or a lighter pink that kind of goes well with the whole overall look of these two slides that we see. Now let's jump to the front end and refresh, and we'll just take a look at what we have. Now you can see we can't click this button here, and that's because we set pointer events to none for all of our elements inside of Unslider. So we need to add a class called enable-pointer events. And we're going to go to custom CSS on that class and set pointer events to all. And this is going to re-enable pointer events for that CTA. So if we jump to the front end, you can see this is now a clickable element. But we still can't drag the slider, which is exactly what we want. Now, just to get a little preview here, you can see that our split slider effect is coming together nicely. Now, I just noticed one more thing on our nav buttons here, and that's that they don't have the correct cursor when hovering over them. So let's select one of those nav buttons and make sure we have that base class selected, not the modified class. And let's go to advanced custom CSS, and let's set that to cursor pointer. And now when we hover over, we're going to get the pointer cursor that we expect with clickable elements. Let's go ahead and save that and collapse the editor. And you can see the effect of that there. Now let's go ahead and get rid of these extra slides. We don't need these. We're actually going to duplicate our initial slides later to make it easier just to swap out the colors, images, and content. But first, we want to set up our animations, because we went to a lot of trouble to make the animations work in this slider, so we want to make sure we put that to good use. So let's go ahead and do some prep work and set up some animation classes. So we're going to call the first class animated --delay -0, and we're going to go to advanced effects, animate on scroll, and we're going to enable animation on this class, set it to something like fade up. We're going to leave the animation duration default, but we are going to adjust the easing to something a little more interesting than the default, such as ease in, out, back, which will give us a little bit of a bounce when these elements are animating in. And we're going to leave the delay blank because this is our non-delayed animation class. Now we're going to make some classes with an animation delay. So we're going to do animated --delay -1. And then we're going to go ahead and set up 3 of these. So animated --delay -2. And then the final one, animated --delay -3. And now we can use the power of Oxygen to go ahead and copy the styles from the first class we set up to all of the other animated delay classes. And this is going to make it easier for us to go in and modify. So we'll select delay-1 and set the animation delay to 200 milliseconds. Then delay-2, we'll set the animation delay to 400 milliseconds. And then delay-3, we're going to set the animation delay to 600 milliseconds. And now we can apply these animated classes to our elements. So this headline will set to delay 1. This one will set to delay 2. And then the CTA button will set to delay 3. This is going to give us kind of a staggered animation effect. And now we can go back to our heading and remove those extra classes that we don't need, since we were just setting them up there and we don't actually need them on that heading in the left slide. Now that we have that set up, we can go ahead and duplicate our initial slides so that later we can just swap out the images and content to make each slide unique. Now let's go ahead and save and jump to the front end, and we'll be able to take a look at what we have. So we have this nice animate out, animate in effect with a staggered animation for the elements in the right slide. And we're using our custom navigation to trigger both slides at once. So let's jump back into Oxygen and we can start styling up our second set of slides. So let's make sure we have the second slide selected in both the first and the second slider. And then on the left-hand side, we'll just go ahead and set the background image to something different. Here's kind of a cotton candy swirl image that I have, and we'll go ahead and adjust the gradient on this as well. Let's adjust it more to the pink or blue side of things and make sure that it looks halfway decent here. The gradient just adds a little bit more visual interest and helps our bright white text stand out. We'll change this heading to say art and passion combine. Then over on the right-hand side, we want to make sure we have the ID selected, of course, and then we're going to adjust that background color to more to the blue side of things to make that blend with the colors in the image. And let's change this heading to something appropriate, such as a wonderful mix. Now we can style our CTA. Make sure you have the ID selected and then go to advanced background, and we're going to go ahead and adjust this more to the blue side again. So now everything looks nice together and has a similar set of colors. Now we're going to go to the third slide and just repeat that process. We'll change the heading to say something like, finally, we arrived together. And then let's go ahead and swap out the background image. So let's browse again and grab this last image that I have prepared. And it's a little more pink. So we're going to adjust the gradient here and go for something a little more to the pink side of things. And we might darken it up a little bit because this background image is actually quite bright. And we do not want our white text to blend into our background image. So let's go over and change our little headline here to say something more appropriate. How about safe at last? And then on the slide itself, let's change that background image more to the pink side to make everything kind of blend and flow a little bit better. And then on the CTA, again, switching to the ID, we're going to change its background color down to the pinker side of things. Now let's save that and let's go ahead and take a look at what we've built on the front end. So let's click next, and you can see we have two sliders moving simultaneously with animated elements. And this is just a really, really nice and modern looking effect. Now, I know we're going to get comments about how do we make this thing mobile friendly, so I'm going to get out ahead of that, and we're going to go ahead and make this thing work on smaller viewports. So let's jump back into Oxygen, and there are just a few adjustments that we need to make. Let's start with our buttons. We're going to go ahead and select our button wrapper, which we may need to do in the structure pane because we have that JavaScript attached to them. And then we're going to drop in an icon element. Now this icon we're going to set to a black color here, and then we'll change the icon to angle left. Perfect. And now we just want to adjust the size, make it a little bit smaller. We'll go 32 pixels on that. Now let's go to Advanced Layout and set that to Display None. and then duplicate it. And we're going to move the copy of that over to the right button. And then we're going to go ahead and swap that icon to angle right. Perfect. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go up and switch down to a smaller viewport. And you can see that things get a little cramped here. So let's go ahead and select our slider wrap div. And in the properties pane, we're going to set it to stack everything vertically. Then we need to set our sliders to 100% width instead of 50%. And this is going to make things look better immediately without doing a whole lot of work. But we still have a few adjustments to make. So we have this little bit of space here at the bottom. We can get rid of that by going back to the slider wrap and going to advanced size and spacing and setting the height to auto. Perfect. So now our navigation elements are where we'd expect them to be, but we don't want them to overlap the CTA. So we're going to change the navigation div to align everything over to the right-hand side. And then we're going to make our icons visible on these buttons at this breakpoint. So we're going to go to Advanced Layout and set them back to Flex on each one of those. And then we're going to select the button Text, and we're going to actually set these to Display None. So we're going to go to Advanced Layout, Display None on both of these text elements. So we'll go there, Display None, and let's save. And let's jump back to the front end and just take a look at what this looks like, not only on desktop where it works beautifully, but also we can go down to a smaller viewport and you can see here that we have a nice navigation there at the bottom right corner. We still have our animated effect. Now the split effect is not as pronounced, of course, because everything's moving together. And you can arrange this differently on mobile devices depending on what you want. But this is a quick and easy way to get this effect working for desktop and mobile. So again, this is Elijah with the Oxygen team, and that's how to make a split slider in Oxygen using the built-in slider element and a little bit of custom code. Thank you very much for watching.